For modern international politics, the issue of the inviolability of borders is one of the most fundamental and at the same time one of the most difficult. After all, left without proper attention, it is sure to generate conflict in the future. Unfortunately, there are too many examples of this in the territory of the former Soviet Union. Nagorno-Karabakh, Transnistria, Abkhazia, and South Ossetia. These conflicts are left over from the collapse of the USSR. Sometimes these conflicts flare up into violent encounters, as recently happened in Nagorno-Karabakh. Therefore, it is important to remember how Kazakhstan managed not only to avoid such situations 30 years ago, but also to formulate the concept of open borders as a basis for the future development of the country. Undoubtedly, this is the merit of the first president, Nursultan Nazarbayev. In the difficult years following the collapse of the USSR, when everything often hung in the balance, it was necessary to show the highest art of diplomacy and skills of political maneuverability. In such a difficult situation, the first president, immediately after gaining independence, set to the task of quickly delineating the borders along the entire perimeter of our republic. This was a wise decision, since the borders officially established and recognized by the international community contribute to ensuring the military and political stability of the state. However, everyone understood that completing the delimitation process would not be easy. It required approving more than 13,000 kilometers of land border. At the same time, Kazakh leadership had to negotiate and find compromises not only with its neighbors in the Central Asian region, represented by Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan, but also with such world powers as the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. A particularly difficult conversation was expected with the Chinese authorities. Kazakhstan inherited from the USSR an unresolved border dispute, which in the Soviet years had even led to a major incident near Lake Zhelenozhsk. Against this background, reaching an agreement with Beijing was considered a top priority in the context of the issue of delimitation.
На протяжении 2 последних лет на этом участке китайской стороной было спровоцировано 23 инцидента.
In this regard, the Kazakh side immediately initiated work in this direction. The issue was discussed at the level of the two heads of state. The negotiations were quite intense. And here, a relationship of personal trust between the Chinese leader Jiang Zemin and Nursultan Nazarbayev came to the fore. Jiang Zemin then told me through an interpreter, "Nursultan, I treat you not just as a leader of another country, I treat you as a friend, and I will speak openly. If we don't resolve this issue now, it will be difficult for you to resolve this issue in the future. I know perfectly well that it was impossible to postpone the question for the future. It was very important that the option was adopted, albeit with a small but still margin in the direction of Kazakhstan. 53% to Kazakhstan, 47% to China. After consulting with his experts, he said, well, we will sign it." As a result, a historic agreement on the Chinese-Kazakh border was signed in 1994. And in 1998, the parties adopted an additional agreement that finally settled all the issues of delimitation. In the future, these documents served as the basis for the establishment of good neighborly relations and the development of fruitful cooperation between Kazakhstan and China. At the same time, no less difficult negotiations were held with the post-Soviet states. After the collapse of the USSR, the former administrative borders between the republics were recognized as state borders. However, this did not solve all the problems of a cross-border nature. There were still mutual claims on certain sides. In this regard, Nursultan Nazarbayev had to conduct constant consultations with the leaders of neighboring countries. On July 5, 2001, during the visit of the Turkmen president Saparmurat Niyazov to our country, the agreement on the delimitation of the Kazakh-Turkmen border was signed. In the same year, a similar agreement was adopted with Kyrgyzstan. The most difficult situation on this issue was observed in relations with Uzbekistan. In the early 2000s, there were even a number of serious incidents on the border. The situation gradually escalated, and then the first president of Kazakhstan took the initiative personally. The task was very difficult, as the former president of Uzbekistan, Islam Karimov, had always distinguished himself as a difficult negotiator. However, one way or another, the parties came to a consensus, which included, among other things, the exchange of some territories. As a result, in November 2001, during Karimov's official visit to Kazakhstan, a treaty on delimitation was signed. The following year, the countries adopted an additional treaty, which put an end to the complex process of defining borders. Thus, Kazakhstan completed the work of delimitation with all its neighbors in Central Asia. Finally, in 2005, a delimitation agreement was signed with the Russian Federation. For Kazakhstan, the negotiations with Moscow were the longest. The parties had to formalize the world's longest land border between the two states, which could not take place in a short time. In 2005, Nursultan Nazarbayev noted the special value of the agreement on the Kazakh-Russian border. The agreement on the state border is an important milestone in our foreign policy. This document has already entered the history of relations between our countries as opening a new page in our strategic partnership. In our difficult days, when territorial disputes and contradictions break out one after another, we gradually understand the importance of the first president's steps for the future of Kazakhstan. Our republic successfully and without any losses carried out the delimitation of the border, which is certainly the result of the efforts of the first president Nursultan Nazarbayev and is a huge contribution to the history of independent Kazakhstan.